And because I have a son who's just moved to Los Angeles, where you are, I know it's always 74 degrees and sunny.
Sorry to tell you, it's actually closer to 88 today. Um, and I don't actually know what happened in the game yesterday, but city is still on a high from that World Series game
Yeah.
earlier this week. It was amazing.
Well, my son who's moved there is a huge baseball fan like I am. As you can see behind my shoulder, I have a photograph of Fenway Park. I am a huge Red Sox fan, as is he, but we are intrigued by the Dodgers, who just fell behind in the World Series
They
three to
did?
two.
Oh
Yeah, so
no.
they go back to Toronto now, and we will see. But I will say this: it has been tremendously exciting baseball. And baseball, I think, needed a shot in the arm like this because, football has become so much more popular than baseball, but it is just great entertainment. I've enjoyed it immensely.
And I like how they speeded up the game, you know?
A
So
lot
these
of
new rules. Yeah.
a lot of people like that, although you're saying that just a couple of days after they played 18 innings.
I
So
know, but not because of their weird politics or policies, but because that was just remarkable that night. What do you think happened? They just got exhausted after that? Anyway, we don't have to.
no, I mean, we could talk about baseball too. I could talk,
Have
I could
to.
talk about baseball forever, but I think it's just, yeah, in terms of how these games end, I mean, there's something to a baseball game, which was done the traditional way, where there is no mechanism to stop it. You just have to win. And I like it so much better than soccer matches, where at the end, if you've run out of, regulation time and it's tied, you have to go to penalty kicks. And to me, that's just not really what soccer's about. It's kind of deflating. The fact that baseball players have to kind of grind it out, and even if it lasts 6 hours, I will say this: on the East Coast, I did not make it to 3
I
a.m.
bet.
to watch that game, but I did enjoy seeing the highlights after the fact.
Well, I would say I feel like we could use some sort of penalty kick kind of timeout rule in Washington to end the shutdown
What a
because
segue that is, Jessica.
they seem like they're just going to grind this one out. Yeah.
I mean, we are 30 days into a government shutdown as of today. Donald Trump is returning right now from Asia. Do you have any idea how this is going to end?
Somebody's got to come up with a offer for a negotiated agreement. I don't see the Democrats caving without, to me, the most striking thing about this shutdown compared to others I've covered is that the party in power has offered literally no deal, no negotiated plan, nothing to begin conversations to end the shutdown. They just want Democrats to cave and then solve it after, which is not how politics works. So my sense is until there's a proposal that we're going to continue in this state.
Yeah,
What
I,
do you
I
think?
agree with you. I agree with you entirely. And one thing that I did not foresee when this all started, I kind of understood from the Democrats' point of view how the shutdown could be used politically to build party unity. And after Chuck Schumer conceded, back in the spring and allowed the government to be funded, Democrats were very angry with him, particularly the base. He may face a primary from AOC, in a couple of years, and that would, you could tell that he did not want to do that again. And so here we are. The Democrats are trying to, keep their base solidified. They've got a good message. They're sticking with it. The only problem with that is that's the Republican strategy too. They're both in it for the same thing, and that's a problem. And I have to say, it's a problem for our government because you can't, no industrialized democracy lets their government shut down. We're the only country that lets this happen, and it has happened once again. And this, I think, we're at 30 days now. I think sometime late next week, it will be the longest shutdown in history. But I don't necessarily, even though there are some signs, and we could talk about those, I don't really see this necessarily even ending next week. I think it could go another couple weeks.
No, it seems like people are going to have to be in extreme pain and anger to force any kind of movement. I mean, I was a little struck by Thune's message yesterday where he really seemed to know, unless people watch John Thune closely, they don't know that was him losing it. He had some riled up tough words, but he's usually so placid. Do you have a theory on what was driving that or yeah.
So I think where Thune is right now is there were some reports late last night that there are a handful of Republicans and Democrats, more moderate in both of their parties, who are working together to try to find some compromise so that they can get to the 60 votes. I think Thune realizes that he's in a position where perhaps, maybe, he can begin to pick off a few additional Democrats. And so he saw that when he put forward a bill to fund, to pay military salaries. He saw a couple more Democrats breaking for this. He needs seven in order to be able to pass something in the Senate. He's not there yet, but I think he sees some hope there. The thing that Thune may not have known was the very next day, today, is that House Democrats were receiving polling that basically says stand firm.
Yeah.
The voters are on your side on this, and that's what House Democrats are being told. And so, I just think again the party building is the way it is. On the Republican side, they do see that there's this big healthcare, the Obamacare credits are going away. There's a huge spike in Obamacare premiums for a lot of people. That's going to be something that is very painful to a lot of voters, and that Republic, may put pressure on Republicans to budge. At the same time, to use the Democratic rhetoric here, the Republicans seem to be weaponizing hunger,
Yeah.
and that food aid, the Trump administration said they won't use emergency funds to extend, food stamps and other food aid as we move forward, past this weekend. Although there is a story that suggests that a judge may order the administration to do so. And so you see those types of dynamics as well, where, these are real people suffering on all these sides. And all of a sudden a judge steps in and could change the balance of the politics because they say, no, well, now we're going to force the administration to fund this food aid, and that could change the dynamic a little bit. But here's the reality, Jessica. The parties are using this as a party building measure, you know, and they both are looking for that. We're a 50-50 nation, so to speak, and they're both looking to get closer to that 50% approval. And my big takeaway for the shutdown on day 30 of the shutdown is it's no wonder so many Americans are abandoning both of these parties, because if this is how we end up governing, I mean, this is ridiculous.
The dysfunction is obvious and ridiculous, as you say. I think there's two other nuances I'd add. One is on social media, one of the themes that's getting a lot of traction is the sort of choice that people are being presented with, which is either get your healthcare covered or get food. And that this, to some extent, it's an issue, it's a messaging strategy that Democrats are playing with that I think could be effective for them, right? If the SNAP benefits are withdrawn, if the judge doesn't order this funded by Friday, and people are going hungry, and the issue is, well, you're going hungry because they won't fund healthcare, that could become a potent political message for the Democrats. There's also this document that's going around, which I did a video on. Other people are picking it up. You've reported on it that, just a month ago, Trump's USDA said that Congress intended for SNAP to be funded in a government shutdown. The very same language they're using to say is untrue. That document has disappeared, and now they're saying, no, legally we can't fund it. So I think that kind of document floating out there, the fact that it's sort of going viral on social, there's an awareness around this. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually adds wind to the Democrats' sails if, if they're unable to get a deal, sorry, not a deal, if they're unable to get a judge's ruling to fund SNAP by tomorrow, they have a lot of quivers in their bow. What do you say? How do you say that? What's this idiom?
I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I do
You know
get
what I'm
exactly what you're talking about. And I think you're right about the Democratic messaging. There is also one other thing, which is interesting that could change the dynamics of this is that sometime about 3 p.m. Eastern time, just about a half an hour from now, Donald Trump lands in Washington and he has been away all week. And while he's made a lot of comments and he's talked to reporters, he hasn't made that many about this shutdown. He doesn't
Right.
really talk much about this, but he comes off of how he describes a meeting with the Chinese leader Xi, where he says on a scale of 0 to 10, he called it a 12 of a meeting. But when you look at all of the reporting on this and what he actually got, essentially we returned to the status quo. He didn't get anything. He went to South Korea. He got a crown. He got a bunch of food that he likes at in all of these
And
meetings.
they paid him, they said they're gonna pay him almost $300 million to lower tariffs or pay the US.
Yep. No, none of what he got out of this makes any sense, and it makes me really think that Xi just rolled Trump. So how this ties to the shutdown is I think Democrats are waiting for Trump to get involved because I think Democrats think that they can roll Trump. And I think, we've seen already when Trump does comment on healthcare, for instance, on Obamacare, that he seems willing to concede, or at least not to concede, but willing to deal, because
Right.
he considers himself the master deal maker. But of course, I think it was Jonathan Chait who wrote that this is kind of leading Donald Trump is like the Democrats are leading Donald Trump into a trap because
Right.
it was healthcare back in his first term that he claimed he could get the much better plan, more care, less dollars, all of the rhetoric. And of course, that went nowhere. And he couldn't even get his own party to back an alternative to Obamacare. And so we're really back at the same situation. The politics around Obamacare only got worse for Republicans because when Trump actually, opposed Obamacare in his first administration, that's actually the point where the inflection turned, where Obamacare became popular.
Right.
you know, and that's the type of thing that he's dealing for. So I actually think Democrats would love to get Trump back here, would love to get him involved in these negotiations so that they can see um, or so that they can influence him. Because when he gets involved, he doesn't stay on message. He's not disciplined. And when he did invite a few weeks ago, he did suggest he was going to invite the Democratic leadership to the White House. It was the Republican leadership in Congress who said, whoa, let's not do that. That's bad. So that's something I think we need to look at and to see if Trump does get himself involved.
And tell me what you think of this, but I wouldn't be surprised if SNAP is unfunded come Friday, and you start to see these food lines. If Trump is surprised by who he sees in these food lines and that they're not, able-bodied young men who don't have jobs, it's soldiers and families and Americans, right? Like, it's unclear that he even knows who is truly funded, who benefits from SNAP. You saw what Tommy Tuberville said about able-bodied men trying to work. So my sense of Thune as well, there's an energy going on right now where there is some panic that these are real, like these are constituents who are going to go hungry and they need to find a solution. And there is no obvious solution right now because Trump and Johnson are saying no negotiations. So there's like a lot of pressure mounting right now. And if we start to see people really suffer this weekend, I wonder if that in some way incents them to offer some kind of deal. I don't know. Maybe not, but it'll definitely make for drama and pain for the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And it's really pain, unfortunately, pain of Americans, of American voters, many of whom voted for Trump, many of whom voted for Kamala Harris in the last election, who are, until that pain is evident, the parties are going to stick along with this party building exercise, which, it's very cynical.
Can I ask you one? Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was just going to say the parties just don't seem to be serving the voters very well at this point. Yeah.
Something's not working, that's for sure. This is a hard turn, but I think it's important to acknowledge. Trump said today, or he posted on Truth Social, that the U.S. is going to start testing nuclear weapons again. And then he doubled down on that, saying they'll announce test dates soon. My theory is that he is confusing testing nuclear weapons, which is banned, for testing the warheads that deliver nuclear weapons, which is allowed, and he'd like to see the latter. But maybe that's just my wishful thinking. What do you think's going on here?
Actually my very first reaction. And what he was doing was obviously reacting to Vladimir Putin, who his relationship with Putin seems to have soured in recent weeks. Putin unveiling two new weapons: one, a nuclear powered missile that he claims can go anywhere in the world very efficiently and stealthily. So that sounds scary. And then
Amazing. Yeah.
and then if you've watched the Netflix series, the Diplomat, and if you haven't, I'm going to spoil it a little bit for you. But the weapon of choice in that the Russians had in a submarine off of the UK was called the Poseidon, and sure enough, that's what Putin has talked about. Is he's got this new weapon that can essentially go anywhere and blow up anything. And so Trump is watching Putin flex. I think all this is about is that Trump was trying to flex, but he just doesn't know the details of what he's saying. And so he's talking about nuclear testing. He thinks that's what he's talking about, but I'm sure a lot of people in the administration just kind of put their hand on their forehead like, no, that's not what we want.
Yeah, and make sure that no hands are near the button.
Yeah. No, it's kind of crazy. But what's interesting to me is that that's that's the angle that immediately came to your mind. And I did not see that all the time when I'm watching your former network CNN, or when I'm reading the news. But the fact that I think that's something. The reason that I like your newsletter, News Not Noise, is that you really do cut through the noise. You cut right to the heart of the point, and you do it on issue after issue, and you've been doing it for years. And I just find it so incredibly valuable to read. Do you want to tell at least my readers who are watching a little bit about your newsletter?
That's so nice of you to say. Yeah, my goal with News Not Noise is the motto is we give you information, not a panic attack, which was a lot easier pre this moment. But the goal is not to sensationalize or focus on the drama, but actually tell you efficiently what happened and give it some context and the so what. I always think of it like we need somebody who's your smartest friend you can call and be like, do I need to care about this? If so, what is it? Why does it matter? And I aspire to try to fill that hole. And we try now to include one thing at the end that we call news that doesn't suck so that you have some sense that something good is happening in the world still.
It's one of my favorite parts, actually.
Thank you. I have to say, I am a years long fan of Political Wire. Anybody who starts working with me, I'm like, you have to get a subscription and follow this because what you do is you not only distill and note, but you notice what actually matters and what we also can ignore. So, can you tell me how do you think about your duty these days when the news is coming at us like a fire hose? It seems like you're trying to capture everything that matters.
That's kind of what it started as, is to really capture everything that matters. And as you say, when there's so much news, it comes, a lot of it matters. And what I like to think of it as Political Wire is it's less of a newsletter than it is a website. But it is a website that you can go to throughout the day and hit refresh and know what's important today, or at least what I think is important right now. And of course, because it's done in a reverse chronological way, the most recent stuff is on top. And then it's a feed of news that you can scroll through to kind of catch up. If you've been in a meeting for a couple hours and you're a political junkie and you just want to find out what's going on, it's a very simple way to get started. But I don't think I've ever told you this before. Do you know the reason I started it? Do you know what it was modeled on?
No, what?
So back when I was in college, I was an economics major, and it took to reading the Wall Street Journal every single day. And the Wall Street Journal, as you know, has tremendous reporting, and it has actually been one of those publications. It is Rupert Murdoch, despite his politics, I think has been a pretty good steward of the Wall Street Journal. The reporting has been extremely strong throughout his tenure as an owner, and it was strong back when I first fell in love with it as well. But back then, actually a newspaper. It was a paper copy, and on the right hand column every Friday was a column called Washington Wire. And I used to get that before I'd go to classes, and I would pick it up, and I devoured Washington Wire. I thought it was the greatest journalism feature that it was ever created. And I found out later that it was actually the oldest of journalism features, continuously run features dating back to the 1940s. I think it started in 1947, if my memory serves. And what it was just a series of nuggets of news, things that made that the Wall Street Journal's Washington bureau had learned, but not necessarily reported in their news that week. And it just kind of rolled them all out. And when the internet came along, a few years after that, I just wanted to create that on the internet. And so about 25 years ago, I did. And that's what Political Wire is aiming to do. It's aiming to be back this thing that I read in the paper copy of the Wall Street Journal every Friday. And sadly, the Wall Street Journal let that feature lapse a few years ago.
New market
But
for you.
but Political Wire is still here. So, and it's, the reason I call it Political Wire and not Washington Wire after the Journal's feature is simply because there's a lot of politics that happens in cities and states that is just as interesting, just as important, and may have tremendous national impact later. So that's what that's all about.
I love it. And you have fulfilled your mission. When we are done with our live, I will go to Political Wire to see what has happened while we're here.
Well, unfortunately, my wife doesn't think I'll ever stop. So as long as I'm breathing, I may actually just keep doing it. So I'm kind of addicted to it.
I can tell.
I
Bad
like
for
to
your wife, good for us.
exactly, exactly. But it has been great chatting with you about this
Okay.
stuff, and I would love to do it again.
I'd love it too. Really enjoy talking to you.
All right, everybody, read News Not Noise.
And
Jessica Yellin on Substack.
and subscribe to Political Wire.
All right.
It's great to
Anyway,
see you.
enjoy the rest of your week. Bye
I'll
bye.
talk to you soon. You too. Bye-bye.